What's up, everyone? We are live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to This Week in Real Estate. I am your host, Ray, and we're broadcasting everywhere that you possibly can broadcast. We're on Clubhouse, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. And this is episode number 295 of This Week in Real Estate. Man, I'm excited to be here today. We have a ton of stuff to cover. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. There was a little bit of news that happened yesterday. Some of you may have heard. We're going to be talking about the impact of that news on housing. We're going to keep it pretty housing focused. But I would love to have your opinion on the issues. And if you've seen the thumbnail today, you already know. You already know. But we got a ton more. So we're going to be talking about stuff like loose election talk, creating anxiety for your broker. There's some new NAR news on the commission lawsuits. We're going to be talking about housing affordability, what it looks like coming up in the future. Home buyers are losing purchasing power. We're going to talk about why. Is there a solution for this? We'll talk about supply side econ. What everyone in the world has to talk about this. And the title of the show today is Red, White, and Mortgage Blues. Housing and the economy. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And if you missed last week's show, you want to go back to YouTube and watch that show because we were I know on the audio, it sounded very serious. The discussion was very serious. We're having serious conversations about serious topics. But if you watch YouTube, you'll be amazed at our ability to have a serious conversation with me in a pumpkin suit. So that did happen. If you're joining us live via YouTube, you can comment and then we could display your comment just like Matt LaMarche did. He was first today. Olivier, what's up, Olivier? He's in the comments too. He thinks we're in big trouble. Matt is excited today for some reason. So we have everyone running the spectrum. If you're in Clubhouse, you can raise your hand. If you want to add to the conversation, raise your hand. You'll find us in the Real Estate Networking Club, but raise your hand and we can add you to the stage and you can actually call in to the broadcast. Brian Hershey says, stop yelling at me. Am I too loud, Brian? Is it too loud over on the Instagram? I don't know if you know this, Brian, but you actually have a volume control on your end. So you could actually turn it down. Let's see. Heather, what's up, Heather? Heather's joining us today there. She says, howdy, Ray. What's up? If you're on Instagram joining us on that conversation, I have that chat on the left side of the screen and I will try to check that and then call you out. Brian Hershey said too loud since 03. Brian and I knew each other back in 03, back in the day. You remember slacklining outside of the dorm, Brian? Have you slacklined lately? Because I tried and wow, I was in shape back then. All right. So let's start jumping into this news. First up, we got some tea. I don't have my tea sounder yet back, but I'm working on it. I've got other sounders to use today that I think everyone will love. But this is an interesting article from Inman, and I wanted to bring it up today because it still applies, even though the election's over. Yes, that's right. If you're watching this and you haven't tuned in, if you've DVR'd the election and you did not check in on it. I did have somebody tell me that yesterday. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. They're like, shh, don't tell me I've DVR'd it. I'm like, what? What? I mean, you're going to have to really avoid news if you want to try to watch the election and replay. Brian Hershey said, we put it up and a kid tore his ACL. Oh, really? This is the first I've spoke of it in 22 years. Statute of limitations. Talking about our slack line back then. Oh yeah, the potential lawsuit. Okay, so let's talk about this. Loose election talk is creating anxiety for agents and clients alike. So showings go on, offers get submitted, clients go to close, agents get paid regardless of whether they agree on what should happen in Washington, D.C., but two major parties present increasingly conflicting visions of the country's future and even competing accounts of its recent events. Some agents report that cases of political tension with clients are becoming less rare. This used to, people would just kind of stick to housing or not talk about it at all, but it does appear that more and more people are sharing their opinion freely, and that is creating some tension between clients. In late September, early October, hundreds of agents and brokerage leaders shared with Intel who they plan to support in November and what their experience has been with clients. Their responses shed light on many in the industry that typically bends over to avoid personal disagreements getting in the way of a deal. Yeah, because we want to make money. But it looks like this is happening less and less. No doubt because of social media and everyone's activity on social media. And no doubt because, there are certain networks out there that are perpetuating complete falsehoods in an effort to get you to watch. They need the view. And if they don't get your view, then they can't make money. So how do they get your view? Well, they perpetuate the stuff that's not true. It's really interesting to see. I get my news from hundreds of sources. So I see both sides. There's also a couple of cool websites that could kind of monitor your own bias and your own blind spots and see what news you see based on what you follow. It's very cool. I think one of them is called Ground or something like that. I've used that a couple of times. Very interesting. But if you get your news from hundreds of sources, you see someone taking one line out of context, and you see a whole bunch of people on Facebook taking that line out of context. And then you see either an independent or the other side playing the full context of the clip, and you know exactly what was actually said. So it's been very interesting, but I wanted to bring this up just as a reminder to be careful, because you could be shooting yourself in the foot, and you could also be wrong. So you always have to make room for being wrong. And you always also have to make room for someone believing something slightly different, but having good intentions anyway. So nearly half of those surveyed in late September and early October by the Inman Intel Index say their clients bring up politics, compared to 1 in 5 who say their clients never raise the topic. Isn't that interesting? In late September, early October, hundreds of agents and brokerage leaders, I've already read that part. The agent-client relationship, a sizable majority of agents, respondents 2 and 3, said this election is putting more strain on the agent-client relationship. Of the agents who say they noticed a change, those who observed the tension is higher is outnumbered 4-1. Those who say it's less tense versus those who say it's less tense. Only 2% of agent respondents said they feel comfortable weighing in after a client shares a political opinion which they disagree. On the other hand, 48% of respondents say they almost always keep their opinion to themselves. Isn't that interesting? LaMarche is over on LinkedIn and says, make beards great again. I think we can all get behind that. He also says, this is a slight to Scap. I hear appraisers wanted Kamala.
So Scap and I don't get political, apparently, because I asked him if he watched the Bryson and Trump thing, and he's like, I don't get political. And I'm like, it's not political, it's golf. You and I love golf. Why can't we talk about golf?
Yeah, that was if you guys haven't watched that, let's say today you're in the 47. It's the election for the 47th president. There's 47 people that did not support him. I thought that was interesting. But let's say you're in the 47% of people that did not support him. Maybe you're in the 20% of that 47% that are extremely worried. I would encourage you to take an hour, maybe even watch it on 2x speed, but watch the Bryson. What's his last name again, Matt?
DeChambeau.
Yeah, DeChambeau. Watch his golf game with Trump. It's really interesting to see the human side of people. And I think anyone that watches that would be hard-pressed to be extremely fearful of the future, because you just see a real guy playing golf. They don't really talk about politics at all, but you just kind of see the man behind the political persona. It's very interesting. That was one of my favorite interviews from the year, just to see the human side of people. So honestly, I watch a lot of news. Hatton Hills Realtor said, okay, but we all know how you voted, Ray, because of how you pronounce Kamala. I really don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. And I keep forgetting. I really tried for a long time. I was going back and forth. I just don't know. So I've heard it both ways on all different kinds of programs. I don't know. I don't want to say it. There's one incredibly wrong way to say it, and I'm terrified of saying it that way. So let's just leave it at that. All right. So just a reminder, be careful with your politics. You could be alienating a lot of people. that you don't really have to alienate, and you might not be making enough space for yourself being wrong. And you always want to make some space for that. All right, let's look at, oh wait, I have this sounder ready. Here we go again. There's some objections flying against the NAR settlements. And this one is for the HomeServices settlement deal. So here we go. Objections fly against the NAR HomeServices settlement deals. In advance of this month's final approval hearing of the National Association of Realtors' proposed settlement and antitrust cases nationwide, the real estate industry awaits whether the U.S. Department of Justice will weigh in on the deal. But in the meantime, home sellers have filed a slew of objections attempting to derail it. The bulk of objections filed October 28th on November were filed October 28th. On November 26th, Judge Stephen Arbaugh of the U.S. District Court of the Western District of Missouri will hold a fairness hearing for the settlements reached with NAR and real estate franchisor HomeServices of America to resolve antitrust claims in a case known as Sitzer, Burnett, and Morrill, as well as other similar cases nationwide. So they had agreed to pay $668 million to the class of tens of millions. The objections are related to the scope of the settlements, protesting the alleged insufficiency of the amount of monetary damages to be awarded to the individual home sellers. And I believe we covered this last week or 2 weeks ago. I believe one of the attorneys, this was last week, was also objecting to the amount of attorney's fees, and she herself was an attorney. It may be a different filing, but so we're not out of the woodwork yet. Keep your eye and ears out for the November 26th rule. I thought I had another comment over there. Sorry. NAR is, let's see. Moreover, the $418 million that NAR has agreed to pay is no way sufficient to address both the nationwide harms of the nationwide NAR conspiracy and the discrete and separate harms stemming from the RBNY agreement conspiracy. Now, NAR is not part of REBNY. And it's not party to the Real Estate Commission lawsuit outside of New York City. So talk about collusion, Ketchmark and Sitzer define the term. Yeah, that's Heather. And Matt Lamar says, drill baby drill for beard oil. I don't think that's the same. I think it's different. The most egregiously unfair, unreasonable, and inadequate provision of the NAR settlement is one that appears unprecedented in its reach. All real estate brokerages whose 2022 total transaction volume falls below an arbitrary threshold of $2 billion will be gifted a proverbial get-out-of-jail-free card, regardless of their participation in the NAR conspiracy, culpability, potential exposure, or ability to pay. So this one goes specifically after the sub-$2 billion brokerages, which may include as many as 6 defendants in the Freedmen that operate substantially or extensively in New York City and exclusively under REBNY rules, will be automatically covered by the NAR settlement without making any monetary contribution. The settling parties have made no showing how this fair, reasonable, or adequate to Freedmen and the REBNY Brooklyn case. Serhant may not meet the criteria based on the statements of the CEO and founder who posted in LinkedIn that Serhant sold $2.2 billion worth of real estate in 2022. Oh, that's interesting. Where'd that number come from then? You know, if they can legally say, oh, we sold less than $2 billion, but publicly say we sold $2.2 billion, where'd that number come from? Once again, the court should take the settling parties at their word. The assertion cannot be contradicted by reported transaction volume in the almanac since Serhant doesn't appear in it. Maybe he's counting transactions under other brokerages that his agents were at the time. I don't know. That's a little gray area. This whole report is at Inman. You guys could check it out, but we kind of have to wait until the 26th of this month to see if this is going to shake out or if the settlements are going to stick. But what do you think? Drop in the comments. Are the settlements going to stick? Or are we going to have to relitigate all this all over again? What's going to happen? Election update. We're at 292 on the Electoral College. I just saw that move in the background. Okay, sorry. I'm closing a whole bunch. I have a whole bunch of windows open for no reason. I forgot to close them before I went live. So I'm closing a whole bunch of windows there. All right. Now we'll go a little faster. All right. So the next up is the judge is granting final approval for 9 commission lawsuit settlements. The judge overseeing the Gibson Commission case on Thursday granted final approval for 9 settlements involving the companies, including Compass and Douglas Edelman. Judge Stephen Ball granted final approval. In addition, Compass and Douglas Edelman, the settlements involved the Real Brokerage, At Properties, Redfin, Realty One Group, Engel and Volkers, HomeSmart, and United Real Estate. Collectively, the companies will pay $110 million. News of the final approvals was first reported by Real Estate. Michael Ketchmark, an attorney representing the plaintiffs, confirmed to Inman on Thursday that the settlements had received final approval. Today's approved was great news for the class members. So it's an interesting situation where you have Ketchmark saying, oh, this is wonderful. The settlements are happening. The settlements are happening. You have other attorneys and other plaintiffs saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not getting enough. This is no good for us. And the attorneys are getting paid too much. They have the cost breakdown so you can see how much each one of the companies paid. The top was Compass at $57.5 million. Let's see who paid the least. That was United Real Estate at $3.75 million. Real Brokerage was second highest at $9.25 billion. That is interesting. From the first place to the second place, the disparity is pretty high there. Okay. I think that's all the news there. So there's been 9 settlements that are actually granted. We have to wait to see if more is going to be granted. We have to wait until the end of the month. Real estate commissions are holding steady, though. So new industry rules were implemented. But you can see on this chart, since January of 2023, real estate commissions have decreased over time from around 2.51%, and it's continued to go down to where it is now at 2.34%. But the NAR settlement class action lawsuit happened March 15th. And at that time, it was about 2.42, and now it's 2.34. The new rule was implemented August 17th, and it was 2.35, and now it's 2.34. So there's really been not much change since the rule had taken place. But I think a lot of the behavior changed in March. So I think there were people that were preeminently implementing the rule changes in their own businesses. And I think you saw some buyer agents struggle to negotiate their commission in these cases. And you saw the amount of commission start to go down then that would basically be reflecting the change. Almost like a market seeing ahead and saying, hey, this is what we think is going to happen. So the market moves ahead of what actually happens. For instance, the markets today went through the roof because Trump won. And so there's been no change. There's been no presidential change. There's been no change in policy. There's been no executive order. But the markets are predicting what's going to happen. So they're putting their money in different places. I think the behavioral change and how agents started to negotiate, how they started to deal with their clients, I think that started happening way back at the beginning of the year. So I think that's why you see somewhat of a decline, because not everyone is skillful in proving their value and negotiating their compensation. So I would beg to differ with the article. I think the article is a bit disingenuous, and I think real estate commissions have changed. All right, so we do have another judge who is ruled in favor of Serhant. So there was a lawsuit for KW Black Label in a recruitment suit with Serhant, and the judge has ruled in favor. After 18 months of fighting in court, Ryan Serhant won a legal battle followed by competing luxury real estate brokerage over his firm's entry into the Philadelphia market. Judge Paula A. Patrick on Tuesday granted Serhant's motion to dismiss the case before it went to trial in Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. Serhant was battling Keller Williams Black Label, the condo shop, after its firm moved into Philadelphia and recruited employees from the Keller Williams franchise. So the lawsuit accused Serhant and his Philadelphia team of plundering. That's a great word to see in a lawsuit. Plundering its clients' intellectual property, confidential information, and personnel while crippling its ability to operate. So an essential element of the case claims is damages, and the plaintiffs have not provided evidence of what their damages are or a causal link between the defendant's actions and any damages. So this was a preemptive. We haven't been damaged yet, but we're sure we will be damaged. Was it dismissed with prejudice or without? That is a question. It's a summary judgment. For all these reasons, summary judgment is granted on this claim. They plan to appeal the court's decision, is what Keller Williams Black Label has said. All right, so that's it for the industry news. I have not been good about looking at the comments, but it doesn't look like we've had any new comments on the YouTubers. Anyone want to weigh in on that from the old clubhouse? Oh, we got quite a few people up on the speakers board. What's up, guys? I'm making moderators of people. Hold.
So just to be clear, because I didn't have the article up, is who's complaining? Like who filed the lawsuit? Keller Williams did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Keller Williams Black Label is saying Serhant came into their market, recruited their employees, took their people, and has inhibited them from operating, or not inhibited. What's the word they said? Not preventing.
Hindering.
Yeah, basically hindering their operations. And the judge says, okay, but what are the damages? And they've essentially said, I don't know.
Yeah, doesn't that mean that like they're just having to compete in the marketplace?
Yeah.
At the end of the day?
It's kind of what, for lack of a better example, and probably an oversimplification, so don't sue me, anyone. It reminds me of what Compass did when they would come in and take a look at a company, but they were looking at a company as like, hey, we're going to buy your company. And then they wouldn't buy the company. Instead, they would just hire the best agents. They would recruit away the best agents. It's kind of like that. I don't know that Serhant ever had a promise that he would purchase the company. So that may be a big way in which this is all different. But it seems like he went, recruited away some agents, recruited away some staff. And then the company who lost their agents and staff are suing and saying, you can't operate in our market. Great that you took those people, but you can't operate in our market. And the judge said, nah, they can.
Well, I think Compass would actually have a stronger argument. Well, sorry, if the shoe was on the other foot. Serhant would probably have a greater argument against someone like a Compass because they were actually paying for business in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
And they could actually show damages to their top line revenue or even profitability, depending on how aggressive they were going to be in your market. But to your point, like no damage, no problem. But just a bunch of crybabies.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like the case against Compass was more robust because the way they got access to the insider information in the books was with a intent to purchase. And then instead of going that route, they just started recruiting away people based on the information that they could see in the books. So it seems like that lawsuit probably had more merit than this one. But again, I'm not an attorney, and I'm especially not an attorney in that area. So maybe I'm wrong, but I agree with you, Matt. Oh, good. Thanks, Scap. What's it worth? Appraiser says new comment. Awesome. Good job.
Always adding to the value of the conversation.
Incredible discourse.
Sure. That's for sure.
And Armando, I see you over here in the chat talking, but you're going to have to, like, if you're on Clubhouse, you're going to have to raise your hand and come up to the stage and speak because I can't monitor that chat too. There's just too many chats.
I got my eyes on it over here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jack. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the market. So no matter who won or lost, the market moves on. So right now we're looking at more homeowners just started pulling cash out of their properties. Here's why. So you may have seen an increase in the home equity pool. U.S. homeowners are sitting on a record amount of equity, but higher interest rates over the past 2 years have made them reluctant to tap into it. that's finally starting to change. The third quarter this year, mortgage holders withdrew $48 billion of home equity, according to ICE Mortgage Technology, the largest volume in 2 years since the Federal Reserve started hiking benchmark interest rates. Let's see. While mortgage rates don't exactly follow the Fed's rate, home equity lines of credit and HELOCs are tied to it. The Fed cut its rate by 0.5% in mid-September. The people are sitting on a little over $17 trillion in total equity collectively. That's roughly 11 trillion of that is tappable, meaning that homeowners can borrow as long as they have that 20% equity in the home. So what are they using it for? Over the past 10 quarters, homeowners have extracted $476 billion in equity. Wow. It's exactly half of the extraction we'd expect to see under a normal circumstance. Wow. Homeowners tend to use equity for repairs, renovation projects, and large expenses, such as college tuition. You know what's interesting about this? I wonder if, because I think we saw this a couple of falls ago. Matt says, silver wave. Good agents will make fast friends with financial planners and wealth advisors. Kind of similar to what I'm thinking. And I can't remember the year it was, but we saw a Q4 move or Q3 move to pull out more equity of the home. And one of the questions we had was, is that to make repairs to the home so that they could get it ready for the market and sell it in the next spring? And I think there's probably two big possibilities. I think one of the possibilities is people can't afford the next home they want to go to due to higher rates. They're tired of living in their current home, so they're going to add on. They're going to change something. They're going to redo the kitchen, redo the bathrooms, redo the primary, suites, all that stuff. They're going to make it a better place for them to live so that they could just stay put because the rates are still high. The other thing, though, that we kind of need to watch is maybe they're going to be doing those renovations to their house because they know since they've purchased the property and they paid $50,000 over what they should have in 2021, but they had to put down the cash and there was no appraisal, there was no inspection. Now they're going to be pulling money out to fix the home that they're in because they know they should have done that a long time ago. They just didn't get around to it. But now they're ready to move again. They need to go to the next place, but they remember we still have the issue with the roof. We're going to have to fix that, replace that. So people may be pulling money out in order to do those fixes so that they can list them in the early spring. So we might see a huge increase in inventory coming. Matt said could be a bit of both. Yeah, I think so.
I have clients that are doing both. I have clients that are going to sell in the spring and they're spending that money over the next 3 to 6 months. But then others that are out looking at the current inventory. And obviously none of us know what's going to come in 3 to 6 months in terms of inventory. But if they feel good about their decision to make a move or get what they want out of their next property, then yes. But the bulk, and I think it was 21, if I remember correctly, that we were talking about this in August, September time frame.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to go by. So you're like, well, this pile of equity sitting over here, we should probably add on a screen porch or build a pool or finish off that basement or, whatever. So I think it's going to be more of a mix this time around than it was, 3 years ago. But the big question mark here is the inventory. Like how much more inventory is going to come? Because it's doubled here in Atlanta, but that just means it went from 1.5 months to 3 months, which is not a substantial step,
Yeah, still a seller's market in most of the country. Well, I know for us, I'm thinking about adding on to my own home because, finding another home and getting out in the market, that's just a lot of trouble. And then we have a really, 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 really low rate right now. So trying to maintain that low rate for as much as possible and just adding on to our house, that's way more attractive to me than going and buying a house that's slightly bigger and paying double the mortgage. So
what do we think the percentage of HELOC dollars are spent on home improvement?
I don't see that in the article specifically.
50%?
Well, what are you saying? The percentage of equity that they have?
Yeah, if somebody's pulling out money from their HELOC, what are they using it for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So if I have a $1 million home and I'm going to pull out 50% or 500,000 to add on and redo the bathroom and the kitchen and everything else, you're thinking 50%?
No. What percentage of dollars that are borrowed with a HELOC are actually going to home improvement versus
college tuition,
a vacation or school tuition? Or
I see.
Because I think it's lucky to be 50%.
You think so? You think more money is going to
other causes?
Other causes.
Yep.
Could be right.
And we have Armando up, by the way.
What's up, Armando?
I would agree with that. With all the credit card debt that people have, I guarantee you a big portion is going to pay down those credit cards.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, unsecured debt. I wonder how much is going to pay down the card, consolidate debt, get a lower interest rate than what you're paying on the credit card. Good points. Good points.
What kind of show is this?
What's up, Armando?
Man, that recall is just wrong. That is amazing.
It's good, isn't it?
I have a quick comment about what you were saying, Ray. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're here. Go.
The strategy on listing and then strategy for buyers. Because I do cold call buyers daily, a lot of numbers, and I've been getting a lot of, we're going to hold off, from coming off the market until after the election, And then today, we all know the result. I had a seller say, we're still going to hold off and wait till rates go down, or at least see what rates do, or where they go in the spring, or 2 months, 3 months, whatever that looks like. So I guess my question is, and I have my opinion, what's the best strategy as far as, after the election, what that would look like, predictions, and speculating on inventory amounts, how many, how many houses are on the market, how many days, versus, you're on the buy side on what you're telling your buyers. Since I'm more on the listing and more, interaction with sellers, my opinion is we should get on the market as soon as possible, because all these people that are waiting after the election are now just getting their homes on the market versus not, beating that inventory coming on, flooding it, this month of November.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you what I tell all my clients. I have right now showing on the YouTube the meme with Jason Momoa stalking someone. I can't remember the guy's name. He played Superman. And Superman is prospects who said they wanted to wait until after the election. And then Jason Momoa behind him stalking him says realtors on November 6th. So for the audio listeners, but that's one of my favorite memes I saw yesterday. I posted it on my Facebook. What I'm telling our clients, it is more important for you and your home to be ready for the market than it is for us to try to time the market for when people are looking to buy, or for when people are returning to the market in order to purchase after the election, or time the market for rates. It's more important that they're ready, that the home is ready, that the marketing is ready, the photos, the high quality photos, drone videos, video, all that stuff is ready, because you never know who is driving in their neighborhood today looking for a house because that person happens to be coming in town today. You never know what's out there. So for us to, and I always hear agents say like, well, Thursday's the best day to list a property, blah, blah, blah. I mean, how do you know? How do you know that somebody on Wednesday wasn't driving through that neighborhood and would have paid over full market value if it had been on the market on Wednesday? But because you listed on Thursday, they totally missed it. We don't know. We pretend to know. We can look at trends and say, well, based on trend lines, there's a slight bump of closings in March. So it appears that if you were to list your home in February, potentially you might be exposed to more buyers in the early spring in my market. And that's over 65 years of data. So I could say that. But I also know that sometimes I can list a home over the holidays and it sells lightning fast at or above what we list it for, because the people in the market that have to buy in that time frame, they have to buy and they're desperate for something, anything. Sorry, cough button. So it's more important. We always say it's more important that the house is ready than that we try to do market timing. What say you, Armando?
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I mean, that's the longest part to get on. The whole preparedness. Just getting the house ready for market takes. If they're not ready, sometimes it takes 1 to 2 weeks. If they're ready to go, 3 days. That really never happens to me, in my experience. But
what about buyers?
Yeah.
What about buying a home? Heather on the Instagram said, think it's a good time to buy now that the election is over. How are you talking to buyers right now?
I'm telling them there's a lot of great homes right now before and now after the election that have been sitting on the market. I've been making a lot of videos, that like, look, this is a great deal. It's a multi-unit. It's a 3-family, trying to help them be a little bit more creative, think outside the box. Or now I'm in the boat where I'm now promoting homes that need maybe not a lot of repair, but some renovation, maybe, a high ticket item or two, but get in the neighborhood at a low price, put in that sweat equity if they want to, if they're at the point in their life that they can do it physically and financially, and they, do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't care what market indicator you're looking for. Never base your decision upon any market timing or market factor. Base it upon when you're ready, and more importantly, when you happen to find the right house for you.
Yeah.
Am I missing something there?
No, that's kind of what we say too. Like, if you find the right house and you think this is the right house for you, don't not buy it because rates are a little bit high, because the next houses you see may not be as good. So would you rather live longer in a house that you love, or live in a house that is kind of okay, but the rates are better? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Ray, it's Terry.
What's up, Terry?
In Pennsylvania. So I'm kind of having the same conversation with some of my buyers right now too, that are approved at $400,000, but that means they're going to have to take money out of a retirement fund, versus them not doing that and looking at a house at $200,000, which in our market, one, is hard to come by, and two, most people would never want to live in it. So, that's become another big conversation for me is it worth taking the money out of your retirement to gain the equity on a house today that you're going to be in for possibly 10 years, resell, get that equity back, and, versus buying a house that's horrendous. And in fact, frankly, the buyers are FHA. They're never going to get these houses. They're not in good enough shape for that. So that's the conversation that I've been having to have with a couple of my buyers right now.
Good. I like the discussion. I think that's where it's headed. It's an individual thing. It's not a mass thing. And if you wait until lots of buyers are coming back to the market, you've just increased your competition for the house that you really love. So,
well, absolutely nothing's going to be built fast enough, at least in the Northeast, in the next 6 months to flood the market with housing. I mean,
yeah, good point.
Even if we have a
cold
mild
up there, right?
winter here, right? Even if we have a mild winter again, there's just not a whole lot of building going on in the winter. So, the market's not going to change that much. It really doesn't matter what happens with interest rates or anything else at this point, because nothing's going to change our inventory without adding, 100,000 houses.
Yeah. Well, speaking of inventory, it's been on the minds of a lot of agents or a lot of buyers. 38% of people who voted said that housing affordability impacted their presidential pick. Goodness, now I need a drink of water. Hang on. I thought this was an interesting stat. I thought it was kind of low, actually. Maybe not. I guess maybe people that are in a home, maybe affordability is not as important to them. Maybe this is people that are currently renting. I've had a cough for 5 minutes. Okay, so the article is on Redfin. Kamala Harris voters were much more likely than Donald Trump voters to say housing affordability factored into their decision. 43% who voted for Harris said affordability impacted their pick, compared to 29% of Trump voters. I thought that was really interesting. There's a whole stack of the reason why people voted, how they voted on Redfin today, showing the economy was 63% of voters, 68% of Trump voters, 60% of Harris voters. Inflation was an issue for 65% of Trump voters, 53% of Harris voters. Protecting democracy, 44% of Trump voters, 68% of Harris voters. Immigration was 72% of Trump voters, 43% of Harris voters. And then you can see the rest on the screen there. But housing affordability was 29% of Trump, 43% of Harris. So only 38% overall. To let you know where that falls, it is just behind the U.S. standing in the world and just ahead of climate change. 40% of voters said that housing affordability impacted their pick for local elected officials. That is way up there on the list compared to the other options.
That makes way more sense.
Why?
Because they're the boots on the ground per se, and frankly, they're the ones that are in the trenches fighting or not fighting, however you look at it, for the needs of their constituents, their local constituents. The president has nothing to do with that. I mean,
true.
Ultimately, the president of the United States is a figurehead. It's a pretty face that travels to other countries and tries to make the U.S. look good and feel good and bring the economy here, versus the guy that's boots on the ground that says, my gosh, we haven't built anything in this entire district in 20 years.
Terry, with all due respect, yeah, there's never been a pretty face there, actually.
Sorry.
That's funny.
I don't know that housing's ever been as big of a platform as it is now either.
Why the change?
Because of the demand.
I think
and what we're seeing around Boston Metro is, 25 years ago, all of the blue collar supporting communities for Boston are all gentrified and just as expensive as the city. And the need for housing, and especially affordable housing. What was there an article this past week that talked about how much higher the average age of a home buyer was? Obviously,
yeah, pushing
people out of the market. I had a first time home buyer, come buy a property with a $450,000 mortgage. And they're going to pay $3,500 a month for rent now for their mortgage. And it's just the cost of being able to find the cost of being able to afford home ownership is just through the roof, and it's eliminating so many people that it's making the platform bigger.
So one of the other conversations that I had recently with another local agent is that we just haven't built small enough homes. All these builders are building these humongous, McMansions, whatever they are, and nobody is building the small capes that used to be built during the war. That was the affordable housing, and nobody builds that. So, now you're stuck with the thought of either a condo or a mobile home in a mobile home park, where typically the lot rent's going to, or the HOA, either way, is going to restrict you again being able to afford to live there. So, it seems like these builders need to stop building these humongous homes and start building a whole bunch of the smaller ones instead. And I know there's a number of reasons why they don't do that.
Why is it? Why is that?
It's money. I honestly think they can make way more money on the upcharge of the mansion than they can on the smaller home, putting in.
No, just any house. Honestly, Terry, like what we're seeing in Atlanta here is that you have builders and developers that are literally just sitting on land, some of it which was already cleared years ago. And right now, when they're looking at their profit margins, they're like, all right, well, normally we would make a 20 or 22 or 25% return on these single family homes that are 1,800 square foot that are in the meat of the market at like $400,000. But it's also going to cost us significantly more, which means our profitability goes down by half or more. And so it's just not profitable. But since they already own the land, they're like, we'll just sit on it. We'll wait for a new president, or we'll wait for interest rates, or we'll wait for more buyers, or we'll wait for that. Demand hasn't really changed, in my opinion. The supply piece, though, what's being controlled at least by some of these like national builders, because we don't have a ton of local builders here anymore, unfortunately. But a lot of these big guys that have really, really deep pockets are just sitting on it. They aren't moving anything at all. There's no sign of anything starting.
No, and I don't know what's controlling the price of the goods in the stores either. But prices to, for a window and for a faucet have gone up so much that I'm guessing their markup on a mansion is much better than on a smaller home.
But they are holding it longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because where are they going to go? Every single person I talk to about movies says, well, where would I go? I can't answer that.
Well, I am, let's get to the Jack brought up this article. I want to get to average age of first-time home buyers is 38. Ironically matching the percent of buyers that thought housing was an issue, 38. The median first-time home buyer reached an all-time high of 38 years old, 3 years older than July of 2023. Let's see, 1980s, typical first-time home buyer was in their late 20s. Wow. First-time home buyer who can enter in today's market is older, has a higher income, and is wealthier. So maybe that's why a lot of builders are looking at building in the low end, saying, meh, first-time home buyers buying something higher, so let's go higher. But they're still not really building in the meat of that market. The other article that I want to bring up, 28% of houses for sale are newly built. That's the lowest share in 3 years. So here's a chart on Redfin. 28% of houses for sale in Q3 were newly built. You can see how it's increased over time, though. That is the lowest share in 3 years, but compared to 2015, that's a huge share of homes. In 2019, 17% of homes for sale were newly built. So we are higher than we used to be, but it's still not enough to satisfy current demand.
But is that an impact because the average price has gone up so significantly, or because first-time home buyers have more money and have been waiting longer, or both?
Well, the other option, Matt, is that there are just fewer homes for sale. So we're looking at 28%. That's a percentage of the market. That's not a number. I wonder how that number compares.
And resale people have likely been in their house for a long time and don't want to let go of their rates, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to tell. Like that may be just because more people are holding onto their home compared to 2019, 2017. Maybe people were selling faster There was more inventory by comparison, resale inventory, which made the sale of new homes as a percentage lower. And now maybe you're seeing some people return to the market, which is why it's the lowest in 3 years. I don't know. There's so many variables in that stat that honestly, it's not really a great stat.
So a lot of this conversation today had me just looking back at my listings this year.
Yeah.
And 12 out of 17 of my listings are people that have either passed away or have gone to senior housing.
Wow.
So they moved for lifestyle reasons, not out of convenience. And I wonder if that continues. But that's a pretty big number, pretty big percentage on my end.
That is really interesting.
My market here, Jack, to your point, our winter market is typically deaths and divorces because nobody does anything in the winter in the Northeast. So that is most of our market.
What are the 3 Ds? Death, divorce,
downsizing.
Diapers.
Downsize. Diapers.
Diapers and
Distress.
Distress.
But even
there's a lot of Ds, actually. There's a lot of Ds.
All the people that come home for the holidays and see how bad their parents are, that's when they start looking for senior housing, and that becomes part of the spring market because they typically can't get into the senior housing until spring or sometimes even fall of the next year.
Well, that's interesting. We don't really have a 55 and older community until now. I think there's one official 55 and older community. We have areas where people that are 55 and older love to live, but it's not exclusive. So we're getting our first exclusive in the city. So that's going to be interesting. Mortgage rates fall. Say again. Sorry.
I said, get your foot in that door.
Yeah, for real. Mortgage rates fall a little after a week jobs report, but all eyes are on the election. So this article is from November 1st. This is before it all happened. The unemployment rate was reported held steady at 4.1%. This was interesting because the jobs were only 12,000. There are only 12,000 jobs created. Vast majority of those jobs were in government and healthcare. And then they lost a lot of jobs in the transportation equipment manufacturing. 44,000 jobs lost. Not great. So this jobs report came out saying that the economy was weaker than it thought. So keep your eyes on the future. I don't know what rates are going to do in response to the president being elected. We'll see what happens. I made a prediction last week that the real estate market would kind of come roaring back. I'm sticking to that. I think that's what's going to happen. The weekly mortgage demand tanks 11% as interest rates surge higher. Yeah. The average contract interest rate, 30-year fixed mortgage, increased to 6.81%. Applications decreased for the 6th consecutive week, with purchase activity falling to its lowest level since mid-August. Applications to refi were most sensitive, fell 19%, and applications to purchase decreased 5%. I think a lot of that was people just waiting. I mean, if you're this close to an election and you're thinking about buying a house, I think a lot of people are going to be like, we'll wait until next week to make that application happen. So there you go. And let me see what other news. Go ahead. Sorry.
When you say you think it's going to come screaming back, the number of sales or what exactly?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people. I mean, 51% of the country voted for the guy, right? So there's a lot of people that were concerned about the direction they were headed. Polls showed that 70% of America, they were worried about the economy. And if you're worried about the direction of the economy, then you're going to make decisions based on fear. And what you're not going to do is buy a new house, usually out of fear. That's not going to happen. Right. But if someone is worried about the economy and then that worry goes away, they're going to be looking more hopeful at the future. No matter who you voted for or what you think, it's just how people operate. They're going to be more hopeful for the future. They're going to be looking for more opportunities. They're going to be looking more of a growth or surplus mindset. And when that happens, people start to move more. You don't move when there's volatility. You stay put. So now that people know over the next 4 years, President Trump will be the president, now that you know that, then, breaking news.
Is released.
Yeah, breaking news, election live updates. Harris congratulates Trump. DOJ looks to end federal case against him. So it also sounds like there's people coming together now, if that happens. And if she's told them to do that, then I think people are going to be feeling better about the whole situation. And what Terry said, your brain is kind of operating on a different wavelength now. Now it's looking for opportunity. Now it's looking for hope. And so that's when people start to make moves, is when they think they can better themselves at another place.
Right.
So that's why I think people are going to come back to the market. There's going to be more inventory. There's going to be more people moving around, is because I think people are going to be seeking the opportunities that they've been slow to go after due to the volatility, the uncertainty, because people just don't move during uncertainty. They just stay put. So unless they're in dire straits, and that in that case it's distressed, and we did see some distressed moves happen. So that's my opinion on it. That it's a change in mindset that brings people out. It's not necessarily any difference in the current economic situation. It's just a change in mindset.
Do you think that's amplified in the higher end? Do you think more high-end buyers for luxury properties, when they feel better about the economy, maybe their business leaders are more likely to make moves than not?
Possibly. I've only had a couple of people not buy a house due to the stock market. The stock market took off today like crazy. So they could be looking and saying, okay, well, the stock market is now doing better. I feel better about making the move. Let's go ahead and do it. That could happen. I mean, there's some decisions in our business that I've been delaying and putting off as long as possible, because if Harris was elected, I wasn't going to do it. There was some expansion decisions that we were making that honestly, if there was a Democrat in the office, we were going to take a second look at the expenses related to the expansion, and we may say, nah, let's not do that business opportunity. But now that there's someone else going there that is more pro-business for what we were trying to do, I'm looking at that decision a lot differently and thinking, well, let's pursue it. So I think there's a lot of that happening in the business realm. But as far as where someone lives and the house that they're in, I don't know. I think time is going to tell where it's going to impact the most. But I think the middle is going to be more amped up about it than either the lower end or the higher end. I think the higher end kind of sees a big picture and maybe thinking it's not going to make that much of a difference. The lower end is like, I don't see the help on my side yet. But I think the middle, which we're in huge need of inventory, I think you might see the middle really come back faster. Kebire, Kebire. I don't know how to say. Kebire says, really? Yes, really. I think you were saying really to my lack of expansion if Harris was going to be president. But yes, that was it. I said it like he said, yeah. I said it like 6 different ways, and you just said, yeah. So I don't know which. I still don't know which. Sorry if I butchered your name, Bo. Thanks for tuning in, though. All right, so let's look at this, though, because this is a stat from Redfin. The number of renter households is growing 3 times faster than homeowner households. And this was the issue that I think Harris was trying to tackle with the promise of a $25,000 credit, which as real estate agents, we know that's not in a market where you have no inventory. That's a nightmare situation because you flood the market with buyers. You still don't have inventory. Home prices go crazy high. So that's not in the plans anymore. So
like, what's the catch too?
Yeah. I mean, well, we know that not everyone,
they offer money, there's a catch.
We know that not everyone would be accepted from the application, but we don't know what those numbers are. But these renter households that have been growing, I think they're the ones that may be returning to the market, but they're going to have better jobs. They're going to have a better economy, I think, before they feel confident. the 2.7% increase, representing a 1.18 million additional renter households, was the second largest, fastest paced since 2015, only trailing the first quarter's 2.8% rate. So this chart shows this top line that's now highlighted. This orange line is homeowner households year-over-year growth. It's currently at 0.9%. And then this bottom red line, red and orange, they could have used like two totally different colors, like green and orange or something. But renter households year-over-year growth is at 2.7%. And you can see it's been growing since, let's see, it was at its lowest at 2020. And then it shot up during the COVID years of 2021, came back down in 2022, and then has recently shot up again to 2.27. So it was also really, really high. Well, that's interesting. Wasn't that the Obama administration that it was high? Yeah. It got really high during Obama years. It was previously, the low was 2004. And then during the housing crisis, it shot up and basically stayed up, just kind of going back and forth with the growth of the renter households. And the only time it went down was 2016 to roughly 2018-ish. And then it started to go back up during the COVID years. So we'll see what happens with that. I think with the growth, with the slowing down of the multifamily, we've been talking about that, where not as many people are renting in the multifamily, or maybe there are, but there's so much multifamily available that those rents are softening a bit. You might see those rent figures start to come down a little bit, the monthly payment. If that happens, I'm curious to know how fast someone would say, well, I want to go ahead and get my own home instead of renting. Because if they're paying less, then it's going to be less attractive, I think, for them to go out and buy a home, but we'll see. All right. So this is, I guess, what we've kind of been waiting. Did y'all see for those of you who missed it, I have a really nice thumbnail today. I thought it was funny. It's me looking at Trump with my hand up going like, what? And then there's a flag in the background there. So that's the thumbnail that this article brought on. What a Trump presidency means for housing. This article is from Broke Agent Media. Good crop work, by the way. They have houses in front and behind Trump. And I'm just going to kind of quickly hit these highlights. Trump's housing policy goals have signaled a commitment to making housing more affordable by focusing on two main areas: increasing housing supply and decreasing regulatory barriers. I mean, I think that's it. If you give money to buyers so that they can afford more homes, but you don't increase the supply, then and we talked about this when she released her plan. Now, because of Katie calling me out on how I say her name, I'm worried about saying it. When she released her plan that said $25,000 down payment assistance or whatever it was towards a house, and I'm going to quote, call for 3 million new builds, there was no real clear indication of what that call for more people to build meant. Trump is trying to increase the housing supply, and I think by decreasing regulatory barriers. He also wants to make federal land available for housing developments. Now, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I don't want to turn federal lands into housing developments. I don't want to see a housing development in a federal park." That's not that's not it. That's, I think, how some of the news that's how some of the news twisted that. But a lot of people don't know that there may be some vacant land just sitting in a city that's owned by the feds. They just own this gigantic lot in the middle of your city, in your town. They own it. Nothing's happening with it. It's just vacant. No one can build on it. No one can do anything with it because they're just sitting on the land. And Trump is like, why are we holding this? What are we doing? And so he wants to make it buildable and put in special projects and things like that to encourage people to build on those federal lands. He's not saying protected lands. It's federal lands. That was let's see. Critics argue that these projects may not reach high demand urban areas due to local regulatory obstacles. So then he's like, fine, we'll reduce regulations. Boom. So he really wants to work on regulations. However, a lot of this is done at the local level. But he wants to make it cheaper and easier for developers to build. He says this strategy may face resistance from advocacy groups who argue that regulations are essential for ensuring safe, sustainable construction. There's a lot of code in buildings. They've been building buildings for years and years and years that are still up to date, and they're really great. And they were old codes from 1980s, 1990s. And it would be really cheap for a builder to build that home these days. But because of all the new codes they have, because of all the new concerns and people not being responsible for their own selves, those costs have gone up considerably. One interesting note on this, immigration policies and housing costs. Trump links immigration with housing costs, arguing that undocumented immigrants place additional demand on housing market. That is true. However, and this doesn't say this in the article, if you if you export illegal immigrants, and there are a lot of illegal immigrants working in construction, then labor costs are going to go up for some builders that are hiring illegal immigrants illegally. So that is something that is not mentioned here, but it could be balanced out by not allowing illegal immigrants to purchase homes. And he's talked about deportation. We'll see what happens. Support for first-time homebuyers. Trump's campaign mentions to provide targeted support for first-time homebuyers through those specifics are limited. This support could take the form of a tax credit or for down payment or relaxed lending terms for first-time homebuyers. By focusing on new buyers, the policy aims to boost homeownership rates, which struggled due to high property and prices and interest. Mortgage rates and financing availability. Trump vowed lower mortgage rates, an appealing proposition for many homebuyers. Let's see. Real estate professionals role in how. Oh, that's just about us. So y'all can read that on Broke Agent Media. It's not behind a paywall. Famously, they take good stuff and put it not behind a paywall at Broke Agent Media over there. So you can go to nowbam.com for that full article. I think it's a good article. It is. I wonder how fast it can all happen. Right. So let's say maybe through an executive order, which is the fastest way stuff happens, he makes more federal lands available for builders. It's still going to take a while for builders then to get the property, develop the property, build on the property. So there's still no short-term fix for housing supply or short-term relief. So I think in the near future, we may not see much of a difference in the housing situation unless, like I said earlier, people are just feeling so different about the market that they come back into the market and they sell their house, or they find new opportunities elsewhere and they decide to sell and move. Was one of the D's that we talked about earlier. So that's my opinion. Oh, that was a loud ding.
And I like Armando's idea of the prefab houses simply because they go up quicker and they're, 2x6 construction, as long as there's not an HOA attached. As soon as you put that HOA in there, now we've got the exact same prices we have now.
Well,
but for me, the neighborhoods going up here, affordable housing starting at $800,000. I don't know who that's affordable.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
So we say this about the HOA, but in our market, HOAs are a good thing. So we have HOAs with low control.
Value?
Yeah, we have low control HOAs, which basically say, hey, we want to make sure that everyone in this neighborhood maintains their property, has to get architectural approval before building something or adding something on, and you can't put a trailer in your yard. And everything else is fairly loose. Right. So you could have an HOA. It depends on the rules of the HOA. You could have an HOA that says, hey, every one of our houses in the neighborhood have to be a GABLOK, GABLOK. And it's got to be sustainable, got to be affordable, and you have to use alternative materials like this. So this is a really cool system. I don't think it's available in the US yet. I've talked about this on the show before, but due to our building codes, this system is not allowed, but it's one of the least expensive and fastest ways to build homes in the world. It's phenomenal. And I wish it got more attention. I wish more people would watch and look for these opportunities to bring things like this to the States. But if something like this was available, you would have more homes being built faster. The cost of construction would go down. They're super efficient. So the living expense of being in these homes is lower because they're super efficient. But our current building codes don't allow it. So we need to update. I think a big part of the deregulation is removing things that are currently in our code, especially about alternative materials that don't necessarily make sense anymore. You know, for years in parts of our area, you can't build a metal home because when people looked at metal homes, they thought, well, it's a trailer and we don't want a metal home or pre-manufactured home in here. And a manufactured home is a mobile home, is a trailer. So we need better definitions for alternative materials because, some of the container homes are super luxurious looking and really cool. And it just depends on how things are built. So something like
Ray,
this.
Will you post a link for that?
Yeah.
Will you post a link somewhere for that type of home?
Yeah, this is gablok.be. And you might have to use the English version /en. So gablok.be/en. And you'll see the story of this product, how it is, houses that are being built this way. But there's dozens of these. This is not the only one, but I think this is the way to build in the future. And we're so strict with our building codes that it lacks innovation that could cut costs and increase efficiency. And people have been saying that for years. The sustainable homes and things like that can't be built because of some of the codes and regulations in our cities. So I think there's a lot of work that could be done for deregulation. And I know there's a lot of my friends on the other side of the aisle that says deregulation, that means you're going to have houses that are falling over. No, it doesn't. It just means that you can now use some alternative resources, and it should be good for overall sustainability and houses that are built from now on. So that's
the other thing that I've been talking about in our area is allowing ADUs.
Yeah.
And that just seems to be something that nobody really wants to talk about here, but we have a lot of properties that are an acre or more that could easily have room for an ADU, and may or may not solve some of the problems. They're more rural, which seems to be where everybody wants to move to. They don't want to be in the cities anymore. So it might solve that issue. But, Southern California had great laws passed over the last few years to make that easy, affordable. The government jumped right in on it and said, if you build what we already have a plan for, we don't even charge you for the plan. Like, you don't even have to go through
That's cool.
The zoning meetings or anything else. You just pick one of our plans and go put it on your property, but pretty much. So they made it super easy, and a lot of people took advantage of it, which is great. In fact, a lot of them, because they became empty nesters, moved into the smaller home and rented out the bigger one.
Yeah. What's up, Shawnee? I see you down there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Long time. Good. I had a comment about HOAs.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of condo townhouses, and I work with a lot of investors, property management, that type of thing. But what I was saying is a trend is I see a lot of builders, new builders, D.R. Horton, Ryan Homes. A lot of times, you would have restrictions for investors once it's turned over to the HOA. But now I'm seeing them. Ryan Homes won't even sell to investors anymore. So they're not even waiting for the HOA to take it because there's such an infiltration. I'm just wondering if you're seeing that in your market. So I know for a fact Ryan Homes you cannot buy, and most of the communities, even if it's not the HOA, has not been turned over as an investor. And then Horton has a very strict limit on each new unit they're building, like rows of townhouses and that type of thing. There are communities in my market where some of them are like 30% for new construction. So I'm just wondering if you're seeing that in other areas.
Yeah,
I love that idea, Johnny, actually.
We have a couple of...
We should do that everywhere.
We have a couple of, I call them budget builders in our area that have limited the number of investors that could purchase in their neighborhood because they're trying to keep the owner percentage up. For condos specifically, there's certain loan types that are no longer available if there's a higher percentage of tenants versus owners. So that may be keeping them marketable.
You're right, but I've never seen it. That is always when it's handed over. Usually, I don't usually see it in the beginning. I can't believe Ryan Homes not at all. They won't sell at all, and that's something the last year that's happened. So I was just really surprised. But even their own lender, their in-house lenders, not allowing. I think restrictions there. But this is telling you how much investment's going on. I mean, there's whole communities I'm telling you where I've checked, and there's it's not even a finished building. There's already, I don't know, 30% investors. So just to FYI.
Well, we're also seeing it return now to the resale area, to where now those homes are coming back on the market. And as those homes come back on the market, even if the builder's not finished, they really can't, in most cases in our area, they can't say, well, an investor can't purchase. For an HOA to say that would probably stop it. But in our area, they haven't included it in any kind of HOA, but the builder still controls the HOA. It'll be interesting to see if that does go that way with the budget builds.
You know what the funny thing is? They did that everywhere. Like remember when REOs were a big thing, and for the first 21 days, investors could not even put an offer in on the home.
Well, here's
that became standard across the board.
Well, Terry,
first-time home buyers a chance.
Well, I'm just telling you this, Terry. I work a lot with these associations, this type of housing, whether it's a HUD or a condo. But there's always been a trend the last 5-10 years of HOAs putting restrictions, right? You have to live there 2 years first. There's only 30% concentration of non-owner occupied allowed. That's a continuing trend, but I haven't seen it in construction. That's what's new.
Well,
that's the trend of HOAs.
The big syndicates love to purchase the BTR type properties. And one of the things that we may see happen from this, if you restrict buyers, then you also have generally a negative impact on price. So while a builder says, hey, we only want to sell to people that are owner occupants, that may be good for a while. But then when you have less buyers in the market, those owner occupants, they can't afford that price that you put it up. That's why the investors were purchasing them and then renting them to the people. So you may see some of those home prices for the new builds go down. And I know builders are super resistant to that. So I could see a situation in which that inventory starts to increase, in which they say, okay, fine, we'll sell these 10 to you.
No, you're right. But the thing is, they can't do anything about resale, because I have investors that wait for they go for the resale in a new community because they know that they can't control a resale on a builder rule, So it's just interesting. And then the HOA hasn't taken over yet. But even I see it over and over again. 2 year, you must be occupant for 2 years before you can rent it. It's happening more and more in the last 7 years since this whole trend towards investment, which I love investment, but it's just interesting to watch all these different things. I mean, I think it's a balance, right? Definitely, you don't want to live in a community. A lot of people don't want to live in a community where there's 60% investors because of how it looks, and that's just proven fact. It's not just me saying that. But like I said, there needs to be a balance, in my opinion. As an investor, there definitely needs to be a balance. I don't know how they should do it though. I don't know if I agree with a blanket you can't buy. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to, for long term, they'd have to attach it to the deed. I don't think they would do that.
No, they haven't. Just Ryan Homes, they can't do anything. Like if you buy it as an owner occupant, you live there, you put it up for sale, they can't stop anybody from doing anything unless it's the HOA has stepped in and created their own bylaw, which could happen.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what happens. I mean, we have to have more inventory, but the renter side of things is slowing down a little bit over, there are more renters now, but they're also, the investors are not making what they once were for new rental homes. So we may see a slowdown in purchasing. It'll be real interesting to see if those big syndicates start to offload their properties slowly. We've been waiting on that to happen. There've been a couple of them locally here that have sold like 300 homes, and they just do it by leaking properties onto the market pretty slowly. They're selling them below market value, as is condition, no inspection, sometimes with a tenant included. So I am curious to see these guys that want to take advantage of their gains in the future. My prediction is that the gains are not going to be as severe because we don't have that buy side. With all the focus on supply side, I think we're going to see a return to normal home appreciation. We're not going to see a depreciation, but I think it's going to be around that 3 to 6% that keeps just above what inflation is and makes it a good investment for most people. I don't think we're going to see the 24, 34, 50% increase in values that we saw previously. But I think it's going to be slow and steady. And those guys, they don't want a 3% increase in general. They're looking for 20, 30, 40% increases in stuff. And if they can't get a 20% gain out of what they're purchasing, then they should just invest in the stock market, because you get an average of 15 to 18 if you're good. So I don't know where it's going to head with the big syndicates. For a long time, they've been investing probably since 2008 or 9. And they hold a lot of properties. And if they start to put those properties back on the market, that's also something that could help the supply side. So I don't know. We'll see. They're at an all-time high now. So when would they take advantage of the gain? They have to get the gain, or else it's not worth anything. So if you don't take the gain, you have no gain. All right. I just want to make one more note on everything before I shut the show down. When I prepare for the show, there is about 10 to 12 sources that I get a lot of my information from. And there are several sources that we don't use, because I say we, it's just me. But there are several sources that I don't use. Well, it's me and the contributors. I have a lot of contributors out there that send me stuff too. But there's a couple of sources I don't use because I found them to be inaccurate or over the top in their assertions, or they didn't show a clear picture of what the truth was. They didn't give me both sides. They gave me something sensational that in many cases turned out to be incorrect. And one of those sources was Business Insider. So I don't use Business Insider for any of the sources, even if it's something that I agree with, or even if it's a economic policy that may be a good take. We don't use it because they've been so inaccurate over the past. Jack Attridge. Yes, he said like Susie Orman. Yes, like Susie Orman. And Grant Cardone. Some of you love Grant Cardone. That's totally fine. He's okay, but he's also been really inaccurate in some of his assertions. So, we try to be very balanced. I try to pick news sources that are accurate. I try to pick stories that are right. And then that's what I share with you guys. One of the things that I've noticed, and I haven't said anything until today after the election, so no one can be like, wow, you're just trying to do this to get votes. I'm not. One of the things that I've noticed is that there's a couple of sources that a lot of people are getting their general economic and political news from that are over the top and sensational to an extent in which they've been completely wrong and literally lying on the air. And I want to bring this up because I have friends of mine that I've noticed watch this stuff and then regurgitate it on Facebook. And I know they're well-intentioned and I know that they're good people, but I also know that they're getting their information from a source that's wildly inaccurate. And maybe they don't have the time to be a nerd like I do and to dig into it and to see what Trump really said, or to see what this other politician really did, or to read this policy or read a bill, which I've done. So I know there's not that much time out there. So I just want to call out one source in particular, because the vitriol and hate from this source is so loud, and the inaccurate reporting from this source is so wildly wrong that somebody's got to say something so that you guys know. So I get news from CNBC because that is financial news. It's generally fair. It's pretty balanced on their takes. But I think kind of a sister station, MSNBC, has been so over the top that they are now lying publicly. And the reason they can do this on this airwave is because their newscasters are considered to be entertainment purposes. And some say, well, it's the balance of Fox News. I look at Fox News, I look at CBS, I look at NBC, I look at ABC, and ABC, CNN, CBS, they're all fairly left-leaning. Fox in the same way is right-leaning. But there's nothing that juxtaposes the complete fabrication of truth that I see on MSNBC. So I want to say this in love. If you're watching the show and you regularly listen to MSNBC, I would like for you to, kind of what I said earlier, leave some space for you to be wrong and challenge your own assertions and beliefs when you hear a newscaster say, well, for instance, there's several of these that I could point out, but this is just one that's kind of a balanced thing that I could point out for you. when you hear newscasters say, well, Harris and the Biden administration had a bipartisan immigration bill and Trump told people not to vote for it, so it didn't pass. Okay. The truth is they had both the House and the Senate at the time. The Democrats didn't vote for that bill the first time. There were 5 Democrats that went against it. The most recent bill that was proposed also included millions and millions of dollars, maybe billions. I have to go back and check, but I know it's millions of dollars for Ukraine, millions of dollars for foreign entities. It included a minimum number of people that would be allowed into our country every month that was in the millions. It included amnesty for people who were here illegally. And it included a lot of things that were basically non-starters for any kind of true bipartisan agreement. Were there some Republicans that agreed to it? Yes. Did that make it completely bipartisan? No. And if you could take the time to read the bill, whenever you hear someone say that, just look at it, just read the bill, because a bill name doesn't mean anything anymore. People are going to name a bill whatever they want to name it to garner support from the public. And do Republicans do some of this? Yeah, absolutely. But newscasters, whenever they report on it very differently when that happens versus just preaching fabrications and untruths. Many people.
Ray, I have to add.
Wait, hang on just a second. Let me finish. Many people are saying Trump is racist, but they forget that Trump supported Jesse Jackson in his run for president. Trump was not racist until he came out and said he was Republican. And if you look at the history of what he's been doing, there's no sign of the racist. Now, part of this is because I'm slightly offended that people would say things like, everyone that agrees with him is a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I agree with his policies. I may not like his moral character 100%, but I agree with a lot of what he said is the best way for our country to move forward. I'm not a Nazi. Why are you calling me a Nazi? Trump has never put anyone to death. There was another argument that said, oh, well, Trump said Liz Cheney should be in front of a death squad. No, that's not what he said. Trump, if you look at the context of the full statement, said that warmongering politicians should be fighting the wars that they're promoting. That's the paraphrased version of what he said. Now, many times he's ineloquent with how he phrases things. And that's because he's not a politician. Dude's a business guy. And he's maybe a bit rabid for one side or the other. But I would just encourage you to check your sources before making blanket statements about a group of people, because you run the risk of looking completely stupid if you don't. Now, if you've checked your sources, if you've read the whole thing in context and you still believe that, by all means, put it out there, because one day there may be somebody that's really bad and we all have to come together and say, this guy is really bad. But I think if you actually do the research, which is sad that you have to do, because this organization is supposed to be a resource in which journalists work, and the journalists are supposed to do the work to know that, oh, well, actually, I looked at the full context of the statement and that was a lie. They're supposed to know that before they go on to a station and then spit the stuff out. So it's kind of sad that you're watching a source that you have to actually check their sources anyway. That should be like the red flag. If I'm watching a source, but I need to go check it. Oh, wait, nope, that's not true. Oh, wait, that's not true. Maybe just change the channel. And hopefully, by looking into the truth of the matter, we as a group can come together and say there's a better way to move forward. He's fairly moderate. A lot of the far right don't like Trump because he's too moderate. I mean, look at Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard. He's got a lot of Democrats on his side, which is kind of interesting. I would say that Obama was fairly moderate. A lot of the far left didn't like him because he was fairly moderate in a lot of his stances. Same with Bill Clinton. So it looks like the U.S. is a fairly moderate country that sees good ideas on both the left and right, and they want to take from some, take from the other, and they want to come together. And I think all of us want to put aside the hate, the vitriol, the lies. And the only way you can do that is by not supporting sources that spit it. that spew it. So that's why I don't use Business Insider, because as far as real estate information goes, it's like a tabloid with untruths throughout. And I would encourage you, if you're drinking in MSNBC daily, don't, because the stuff they're saying is flat out lies. Last night was full of it. And I was watching to see what they say versus what was happening on other news networks. And they had pundits sharing their opinion as a journalist on there that were just saying complete untruths. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. There's a bunch of them that I could go into. I've thought several times about just making a list of all these things that they're saying that are not true, and then having the sources where people could go look up the truth. But honestly, I got to go sell houses. That's too much trouble. I'm not a political pundit. You guys can do your own research. You're smart, and I think you can look into it a little more. But just take a second and step back. When you hear someone say that stuff, look into it before you share it, before you put it on your Facebook, because there may be a lot of your clients that have looked into it, and now they look at you as uneducated because you're not sharing stuff that's truthful. So that's my 2 cents. Shawnee, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say I would agree. I don't listen to that channel. I mean, I just don't watch it. It's just not something I watch. But I wanted to say that Fox is an entertainment network too. So is MSNBC. I like to listen to foreign news, for instance, the BBC or other sources, because they actually don't have a place. But Fox lies a lot. So does MSNBC. They both lie a lot. I've seen lies on air. So I just think that maybe if you move yourself from a U.S. market and look at foreign sites, probably they don't have a side to take. So that's why.
That's true. The only thing you have to be careful of is that the U.S. has rules about the ownership of news channels, right? So the ownership of a news channel cannot be owned by a foreign entity. And the reason is they don't want any foreign interference into the election. And always, I know you're doing this, Shawnee, because you're smart, but the foreign interest is going to have different interest generally than the United States. For instance, do they want tariffs? No way. They want to be able to tariff our stuff at 100% with no consequence. But, so the opinion you're going to hear on tariffs.
I don't mean to that extent. I'm a smart person. I don't mean to that extent.
Yes. I know. So I would just say, find news sources that you could double check, and the more you double check, they're right. Those are the ones to maybe pour into more. I like X a lot. Part of the reason I like X, because it used to be Twitter. They have where people can then put sources to truths or untruths. And so when someone says something, they have community notes, and you can check what people are saying. And it's very interesting to see someone says, oh, this has happened. And then you see the community note says, actually, this is the context. Here's the link. Here's the source. So I'm really loving X for breaking news. I used to only use it for live sports. And on the live sports, like I would be all about Razorback stuff or all about the Bears stuff. But I'm using it more and more for news. When something happens, I'm finding myself going there because I could see all sides. I could see what the left's saying, what the right's saying, what the middle's saying, what the libertarian's saying. I could see all of that, see what's happening. And then I can find the news sources that are giving me the accurate depiction of like, here's what's actually happening. And you're right, Shawnee, sometimes they are the BBC. Sometimes they aren't. So Murray Weddings, yes. What's up, buddy? He says on Instagram, let's make money over the next 4 years. Yes, I think we can all get behind that. Jack, did you want to say something? I thought, was that Matt or was that Jack? Sorry.
That was me.
Yeah. I was just going to say, just to kind of tie a bow on what you just said there, if you voted for Kamala, we can still be friends. If you voted for Trump, we can also still be friends. But if you refer another client to Atlanta, Georgia, and you do not recommend or refer him to Matt LaMarche, then you are dead to me. Okay? Does everyone hear that?
Everyone gets it. So, yeah. So send your stuff to Glenda Baker. That's GLENN.
You are fake news. You are so fake. Okay,
you're fake news.
You got the worst beard in the game.
Don't be rude.
You got the worst beard.
These people are stupid. Okay, so stupid.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some weaving.
That's some weaving. So yeah, Armando, what do you want to say, Bob?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this up about the news and numbers and how, the mainstream media. I mean, I don't trust them more than I can throw them. Even the local news, because they always like to frame things. And you have to look at the people that own the whole network, not just the small little local news.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who own the network are in the major parties of whatever political side. So all of them are connected in one biased way. So I don't believe any of that. Like, I typed in X, I like Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly goes hard, and she's in the middle. She's like a little bit right leaning, but she's a great source.
Yeah.
And even CBS and Trump had this open lawsuit now against when they were interviewing Kamala, and she went down her incoherent rant like she usually does, but they edited it to make it shorter. I mean,
that's the stuff
like that.
That's the stuff that makes me question the whole mainstream media thing. I just present it. There's a Instagram account I follow. I think it's like Real News No BS, but they spell out the BS. And that's been pretty good. But I mean, it's okay to have your own flavor, right? As long as you know and recognize this is my own flavor, I'm going to double check this. So there's certain shows I watch on Fox because they're funny. Like one of them's The Five. The other one's Greg Gutfeld. He's funny. He's a comedian. He talks about news stuff in a way a comic does. I can't take whatever he says as gospel truth. But one of the things I like about The Five is they always have a Democrat on there representing that side. And there's one in particular who's just really good and genuine. And his name's Harold. And they have a segment called In Your Face Harold, which is just funny. And they kind of poke fun that they know he's a Democrat and they're not. And that's totally fine. But when Greg Gutfeld says something, I'm not going to take that as 100% true. I'm going to go say, okay, he's a comedian. He's exaggerating to be funny. I'm going to go find the truth. I'm going to find what he's talking about and kind of look at both sides. But that means I have to do work. That means I have to actually do my part. So if you don't want to do that, just find news sources that just tell you like it is. And over the next 4 years, if you hear that one side's doing something, the other side's doing something, go find a couple of different sources, be educated before you click the share button on Facebook. Because I think
Never just look at one news source. That's a mistake too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ray, but people who watch just only one. I mean, I was at the gym this morning. These women, they only watch one news network. And I'm just like, it's just sad that people believe everything is gospel.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely
so
don't
you're
do
telling
that.
me if I watch the View, I'm not getting the
No, I think they have all sides on the View, don't they?
No.
The worst ones are like my mother's age. My mom's 85, and she believes absolutely everything on every channel that comes across. It's like, how can you believe it all, Mom?
I mean,
It can't all be
for
right.
instance, for that one listener that I have that loves The View, Whoopi Goldberg saying that Trump's going to break up interracial marriages. Like, come on. Like, it's just, I mean, go check this stuff out. I mean, it got a little crazy in the last couple of weeks. Can we agree? So let's just chill. And I think we can all gather around. Like I said, I pick news stories from all different kinds of outlets, from about 12 or 15 different outlets that I check daily. I also have a news tracker on Google looking for certain keywords. So occasionally we'll have articles that from a source that I don't normally track. There have been several times where we've found an article and I've looked at it, and then that article is from something that's so far left or so far right. Or somebody sent me something one time that was a copy paste of an article. It's like, where is this? So I used Apple's little thing where you can highlight an image and find the actual source. It was from Al Jazeera. Like, I'm not going to use them as a source, guys. So be careful where you're getting your news from, and at least recognize the bias that's there. And the last thing I'll say is, if you watch MSNBC, just don't, because they are the number of untruths that I researched myself was astounding. I mean, it was really concerning, and I feel like they're on purpose trying to divide us. So I don't want to be divided. I want to bring people together. I want to make a lot of money, like like Murray Weddings on Instagram said. I mean, that's where we're going. So let's just be better together. And it'd be good to have America great again and healthy again. I think those are great things. So I think that's something we can get behind. Well, thanks guys for joining us. If you disagree with me,
because you'd be in jail.
You'd be in jail. No, I'm kidding with you.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
I mean, I've got all these on the soundboard. I'm going to have to use them sometime. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us this week. If you have any questions about that or want to know some more of the hoaxes, I can give you some links. But it did get a little worrisome. So follow me over on Instagram, Ray Zorback, RayZorback. I can promise you there's nothing political on there, mostly. So follow me there. If you have any questions, just shoot me a DM. But thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thank you for the discussion. And let's see what happens next 4 years. Let's be hopeful. Bye, everybody.